Looking for effortless style without the designer price tag? Discover your new favorite looks at shockshop.us. From chic everyday essentials to statement pieces that turn heads, ShockShop brings you trend-forward women's fashion designed to fit your life and your budget. Whether you're dressing for brunch, the office, date night, or a weekend getaway, we've got styles that move with you and make you feel confident. Fresh drops, flattering fits, fast shipping. Upgrade your wardrobe today at shockshop.us, where comfort meets confidence and style is always in season. Shop now and shine your way.
Idaho woman accused of ramming stolen ambulance into DHS office and attempting arson faces federal charges. A 43-year-old Idaho woman is facing serious federal charges after authorities alleged she stole an ambulance, drove it into a building housing Department of Homeland Security offices, and attempted to ignite a fire inside the structure using gasoline. Federal prosecutors say the incident unfolded late at night in Meridian, Idaho, and involved deliberate planning, the purchase of fuel containers and lighter fluid hours beforehand, and the use of a stolen emergency vehicle to breach a government-leased property. The suspect, identified in court documents as Sarah Elizabeth George of Boise, was arrested following several days of investigation involving local police, federal agents, surveillance footage analysis, and vehicle tracking. She now faces 2 major federal charges that each carry the possibility of lengthy prison sentences if she is convicted. Authorities describe the case as an intentional attack on property used by federal agencies. George has not been convicted, and the allegations stem from a criminal complaint filed in U.S. District Court for the District of Idaho. The night of the incident. According to the federal affidavit, the chain of events began shortly before 11 p.m. on February 18th. Investigators alleged that George stole an ambulance belonging to Canyon County Paramedics from outside St. Luke's Meridian Medical Center. Court documents state that the ambulance had been left outside while emergency personnel were inside transporting a patient. Within minutes of the vehicle being taken, authorities say it was driven away from the hospital grounds. Surveillance footage cited in the complaint reportedly shows a dark-colored pickup truck parking near a nearby medical facility roughly 20 minutes before the ambulance theft occurred. Investigators later connected that vehicle to George through registration records and prior law enforcement encounters. Prosecutors allege that after taking the ambulance, the suspect briefly stopped in a nearby parking lot. There, according to the affidavit, she loaded gasoline containers and a plastic bag into the vehicle before driving toward the Portico North building, a commercial structure that houses office space leased by the U.S. General Services Administration for the Department of Homeland Security and Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE. At approximately 11:10 p.m., authorities say the stolen ambulance was driven directly through the south entrance of the building. Glass shattered as the vehicle smashed through the doors and into the lobby. Investigators allege that gasoline was poured both inside the ambulance and across portions of the building's interior floor. Before any fire could fully ignite, police officers responding to the scene arrived. The suspect fled on foot. No injuries were reported in connection with the crash. Gasoline purchases and surveillance evidence. Federal investigators say the alleged attack was not spontaneous. According to the affidavit, earlier that evening, George was captured on surveillance video at a Meridian Walmart purchasing 2 red gasoline containers and lighter fluid at a self-checkout station. A receipt timestamped at approximately 9:17 p.m. lists those items, prosecutors say. Additional footage cited in the complaint reportedly shows the suspect later at a Fred Meyer gas station filling the containers with gasoline. Authorities say a loyalty or rewards account used during the fuel purchase was registered in George's name. The affidavit also includes still images comparing a blue Dodge Dakota pickup truck seen in surveillance footage to a vehicle registered to members of George's family. Investigators pointed to similar paint wear patterns and body characteristics when describing how they linked the truck to her. Further, court documents reference a February 6 traffic stop in which George was photographed driving a blue Dodge Dakota. Investigators allege that this same vehicle was later seen leaving the vicinity of the Portico North building after the crash. Dash camera footage from a Meridian police vehicle reportedly captured an individual matching the suspect's description crossing a nearby roadway on foot shortly after the ambulance struck the building. Surveillance cameras later showed a person entering a pickup truck and driving away from the area. Meridian Police Chief Tracy Bastarachia described the identification process as good old-fashioned police work, citing business canvassing, surveillance review, and vehicle record analysis. The social media post referenced in court documents. One aspect of the affidavit that investigators highlighted involved an online post allegedly made on the morning of February 18th. According to the criminal complaint, authorities located a social media post attributed to George that depicted an AI-generated image of the White House engulfed in flames. The caption reportedly read, "If it can be destroyed by truth, then it should be destroyed. It was built in lies anyways." Prosecutors included a screenshot of the post as part of the federal filing. While investigators did not publicly characterize the post as a direct threat, its timing and content were cited as relevant to the broader investigation. Federal charges and potential penalties.
George is charged with malicious destruction of government property by fire, malicious destruction of property used in or affecting interstate commerce. Both charges fall under federal criminal statutes addressing arson and destruction of federally used property. Under U.S. law, malicious destruction of government property by fire can carry a sentence ranging from 5 to 20 years in prison if convicted. Similarly, destruction of property affecting interstate commerce, often charged under federal arson statutes, can result in comparable penalties. If found guilty on both counts, sentencing could potentially include substantial prison time, fines, and restitution for property damage. It is important to note that a criminal complaint represents allegations. George is presumed innocent unless proven guilty in a court of law. The targeted building. The Portico North building in Meridian houses office space leased by the federal government. According to the complaint, space within the building is used by the Department of Homeland Security and Immigration and Customs Enforcement. The property is managed through the U.S. General Services Administration, which oversees federal real estate and facilities. Investigators have not publicly stated whether specific offices were open or staffed at the time of the crash, though the incident occurred late in the evening. The crash caused structural damage to the entrance and interior lobby area. Authorities have not released an official estimate of repair costs. Multi-agent investigation. The investigation involved cooperation between Meridian Police Department, Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, ATF. Law enforcement officials executed an arrest warrant and a search warrant at George's residence several days after the incident. Officials have indicated that the investigation remains ongoing and that additional charges could be filed depending on what further evidence reveals. Chief Pastorachia stated publicly that such conduct would be investigated and charged to the fullest extent of the law. The legal road ahead. Following her arrest, George's case will proceed through the federal court system. The typical process includes initial appearance and detention hearing, preliminary hearing or grand jury indictment, arraignment, pretrial motions and potential plea negotiations, trial if no plea agreement is reached. If convicted, sentencing would occur at a later date, with federal sentencing guidelines influencing the final term.
Defense attorneys in cases involving alleged arson or politically sensitive targets sometimes explore arguments related to mental state, intent, or diminished capacity. However, no defense strategy has been formally presented in court as of this writing. Broader context. Attacks on government facilities. Incidents involving damage or attempted damage to government buildings often trigger federal jurisdiction due to the involvement of interstate commerce statutes and federal property protections. Under federal law, using fire or explosives to damage property involved in interstate commerce falls within the scope of national enforcement. Such cases frequently involve the ATF due to its expertise in fire investigation and accelerant analysis. The use of a stolen emergency vehicle in this case also introduces additional legal implications, including potential state-level charges related to vehicle theft and reckless endangerment. Community reaction. Public reaction has been mixed, with many expressing shock at the alleged targeting of a building housing federal offices. Online comment sections reflect strong opinions, particularly regarding the seriousness of the charges and the potential penalties involved. Some commentators have argued that federal property attacks should result in maximum sentences, while others emphasize the importance of due process and mental health evaluation. Local residents expressed relief that no injuries were reported and that emergency responders were able to contain the situation before a fire spread. The significance of intent. A key legal question in the case will likely center on intent. Federal arson statutes require proof that the defendant acted maliciously and intentionally used fire or attempted to use fire to damage property. Prosecutors may rely on surveillance footage, gasoline purchases, vehicle tracking, and the alleged social media post to establish premeditation. Defense counsel may challenge whether the evidence demonstrates intent to ignite the building or whether the crash itself constituted reckless but non-terroristic conduct. Such determinations are ultimately made by a jury if the case proceeds to trial. Use of emergency vehicles in crimes. The alleged theft of an ambulance adds a unique and concerning dimension to the case. Ambulances are critical emergency resources. Removing one from service can potentially endanger patients who rely on rapid response times. Authorities noted that the ambulance was taken while emergency medical personnel were inside a hospital transporting a patient. Though no harm to patients was reported, law enforcement emphasized the seriousness of commandeering emergency equipment. Evidence collection and technology. The case highlights modern investigative methods, including retail surveillance systems, self-checkout transaction tracking, gas station loyalty card data, license plate identification, police dashcam footage, vehicle registration databases. Law enforcement officials described piecing together multiple video angles and records over 5 days to establish probable cause. The use of retail transaction data, including time-stamped receipts, is increasingly common in federal criminal investigations. What happens next? As the case moves forward, prosecutors will present evidence to a federal judge or grand jury to formalize charges beyond the initial complaint. Georgia's legal team will have the opportunity to review discovery materials, file motions, challenging evidence, and prepare a defense. Depending on the outcome, the case could result in a plea agreement, dismissal of certain charges, trial, conviction and sentencing, acquittal. At this stage, the allegations remain unproven in court. Conclusion: the case of Sarah Elizabeth George has drawn national attention due to the dramatic nature of the allegations. The theft of an ambulance, a late-night crash into a building housing Department of Homeland Security offices, and an alleged attempt to ignite a fire inside the structure. Federal authorities describe the incident as deliberate and planned, supported by surveillance footage and purchase records. The defense has not yet presented its arguments publicly. If convicted, George could face substantial prison time under federal arson and property destruction statutes. For now, the matter remains in the hands of the federal court system, where evidence will be examined, arguments presented, and a determination made according to law. The investigation continues, and officials have indicated that additional developments are possible as the legal process unfolds.